Welcome to the Mindset Recruiting Podcast. I'm Alex Rojas, your talent advisor and host. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about recruiting teams. That's right. In the spirit of the Olympics right now, as countries are competing, they're either going for the gold, some sort of medal, or they're experiencing the agony of defeat, right? So they're either competing as individuals or as teams. And so that's a really cool concept when you think about it. So how does this relate to recruiters, specifically recruiting teams? Can you recall a time when you worked on a winning recruiting team? Or how about a time when you were on a recruiting team that really just kind of sucked, was really bad? In this episode, I'm going to walk you through what it takes to be on a winning team. I'm going to do this by highlighting what winners do, the standards of excellence that you have to have, and that bar that you continuously have to raise. You'll know by the end of this episode just how good or bad your recruiting team really is. And more importantly, you're going to know who's at fault, who's to blame, who to point the fingers to. Is it leadership? Is it your boss? Is it your coworkers, your colleagues? Or is it you? Let's discuss. Okay, so as we dig into this, it's very important to understand what are the rules of the game. If we're going to compete, and we got to know who the players are, who the athletes are, but more importantly, what are the rules of the game? So I'm going to focus on 5 key areas in really understanding the rules of the game. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly here. So the first one is going to be the company itself, and it always starts off at the top. You want to know who the CEO, who executives are, and what is the leadership makeup look like within any kind of organization. That's going to tie into really understanding what your corporate culture is all about. And corporate cultures are just in itself are a very unique experience. Then you're going to look at the products or the services. How do you make money within the company? And what level of quality is your products, are your services? And then you want to look at the maturity cycle of your company. And a lot of times that's going to be tied into your revenue and your profit margins. Doesn't matter if you're a startup or a 100-year-old company. Either way, understanding who the company is that you're recruiting for is going to be the first rule of the game. The second area that you're going to look at is who are the stakeholders. We always hear this word, stakeholders, and there's going to be some key stakeholders in which recruiting has to have partnerships with. The first and foremost one is going to be human resources. No matter what, recruiting is hitched to human resources. It's like the brother and sister in a family. Then you're going to have the hiring managers dynamic. The relationships that recruiters have with hiring managers is an essential stakeholder. And then you're going to look at the different departments within an organization, within the company that recruiters are going to have interactions and engagements with. Sales and business development is going to be a key area. So is the marketing team, and so is the financial, legal, and the contracts team. All of those affect recruiting and are essential when it comes to understanding who your partners are, who the stakeholders are within the organization. The third area that you want to look at understanding the rules of the game is going to be the recruiting infrastructure. So in this case, you're going to look at the technology and the tools that the company has invested in. And first and foremost, it's always going to be your ATS, your applicant tracking system. And if you're lucky enough to have a CRM, that's also going to be important. But more importantly, how much is your company investing in when it comes to seats, to licenses? That's going to matter as well. And then the other area when you're looking at infrastructure within a TA organization is what is the process? What are the processes? What does the policy look like? What do the workflows look like? So you want to make sure that those are really well defined or fluid and they're constantly being enhanced. And then finally in this area, as far as the infrastructure goes, there has to be good reporting, good data metrics and analytics, because that determines strategy. And more importantly, it shows a level of transparency that you want to show to the stakeholders. The fourth area that we're going to look at in the rules of the game is going to be the talent acquisition organization itself. And so there are multiple different types of roles within recruiting teams, but we all, again, start off at the top. You're looking at an executive, a vice vice president, a director role. Maybe you're a recruiting manager, a staffing lead. And then you're going to have these levels of recruiters. It's going to go entry to junior to senior to principal level type of recruiters. Then you're going to have the support system. There's going to be coordinators. There's going to be researchers or analysts, and even recruiter marketers as well. So the fifth area that we want to look at is going to be kind of a piggyback to the TA organization, is the specialization that recruiters are starting to carve out within teams. And so this is going to be recruiters that maybe specialize on executive searches within a company, or of course you have the collegiate university relations recruiters, you have internal mobility. These are the ones that focus on redeployment for employees. Of course, you have DEI recruiters. That's a big niche right now in the marketplace. And then you have recruiters that are really just supporting corporate function type of roles within the organization. But these are the essential framework of the rules of the game, who the athletes are, who the players are within your company. Okay, so as we move into the next area on what makes a winning team, or a losing team for that matter, we want to focus on the recruiting model. The model is very important because it determines really how your team structure is built. So the first thing that we want to look at is team structure. So again, this is going to be a little bit different than your TA organization. When we look at the structure of your organization, is it centralized or is it non-centralized, right? So that means, where are your recruiters located? What kind of budget does the TA organization have? Now, this is something that you can look at. I've seen companies that allocate 1% of their entire budget, meaning their entire revenue, towards the TA organization. I think it's probably more along the lines of somewhere between 2 to 4%, optimal 5 to 7% if you're really committed to a TA organization. Now, the other part about the structure is making sure that team meetings, those are going to be really important to determine, the makeup of an organization and what kind of goals you have either as a team or individually, and what kind of professional development support is there. Those are the dynamics of a team structure. The second area is going to be external activities. And so when we look at external activities, kind of determine, what is your company doing right now when it comes to job fairs, career invitationals? Are you doing virtual online events? Are you hosting those right now? What kind of conferences are you supporting, or is your team attending? And how much money is your company spending on marketing, on advertising, whether it's media or print? It's really important. The third area that we're going to look at when we look at the recruiting model is going to be job postings. Job postings tells a lot about an organization. Are you only solely focused on organic job postings? That means everything that's within your career site. Or is the company spending money? Are they going out there and paying for job posts to be promoted, right? And so Indeed and LinkedIn are really big into this, or any of the job boards that are out there are going to be essential in kind of playing what kind of outreach are you spending when it comes to the advertising. Of course, there's always free. There's even a level of programmatic advertisement that really is an agency kind of managing all of your spending when it comes to job posts and how you promote your jobs. And more importantly, what is the company doing when it comes to the content and the quality of your job postings? The fourth area is going to be communications. And I firmly believe, I'm a big champion when it comes to making sure that there's a wide variety of communication channels to your talent community. And so the basic ones are going to be the emails, the phone calls that you're going to make. But then there's going to be e-marketing. Is your company vested in e-marketing messaging? Do you have the tools and the platforms to be effective in branding and marketing your positions, your opportunities, your brand? And then there's a social media presence, which again, a lot of times, a lot of companies just really lack. Of course, there's one-to-one texting, mass texting, testing. I'm a firm believer in some of the digital technology when it comes to bots. Bots are really big. If you don't have chat bots incorporated within your company at some level, then you realize that you may not be winning in that area. And more importantly, as artificial intelligence products and tools continue making the marketplace, one of the big ones that I'm seeing out there right now is conversational AI technology. These are digital voice assistants, tools that are out there now that can scale and reach out to your talent community. Finally, the fifth area is going to be programs. And so how evolved are your programs within your recruiting model? And so specifically, employee referrals. Employee referral percentages should be on the low end 20%, and on the high end, or the overachievers end, about 50% of your hires should come from employee referrals. Of course, those are going to be the more reputable, big name companies that are able to do that. But what kind of retention programs do you have within your organization that you play a part of? Alumni, military, diversity, and again, even on the social media side, how effective are your programs? You can see here, when you look at this model that we've laid out here, you can determine, hey, I'm winning here, we're losing here, we're really losing bad there, we need some work to be done in that area. That's a great way of determining if you're on the winning or losing side of a recruiting model. Okay, so the next area that we want to focus on when it comes to your recruiting team to determine if you're winning or losing is you want to look at the full life cycle process. That's right. How well does your team compete in this area? So we're going to break this down and highlight some of the most important factors of a full life cycle process. There's going to be 5 areas, again, that we want to focus on. The first one is going to be candidate profiles. So if we look at candidate profiles, does your company really know who your target audience is? Or does your recruiting team know who your target audience is? That is going to be so important because that's going to dictate whether or not you take on a strategy and an approach that you're committed to pipelining, to segmenting your talent pool that you have within your ATS or your CRM. Developing talent communities is a big indicator that demonstrates whether or not you're winning or losing within your team. The second area is going to be sourcing. How effective is your recruiting team when it comes to sourcing, right? Do you have a dedicated type of sourcer? Or do you have people that are actually researching? What's the outreach? How many touch points do you have mapped out or baked in when it comes to prospecting and developing those leads so that you can turn those candidates into applicants? And when you look at the screening process, how thorough and what level of quality do you have when it comes to positioning opportunities? I have a great episode that I talk about candidate pitches, right? And so when recruiting pitches are so important when you're interacting and engaging with candidates. And then what's that submittal process look like? Those are going to be, again, great indicators to determine where your recruiting team is when it comes to sourcing. The third area is going to be focusing on the recruiter itself. So as a recruiter, the coordination, the facilitation of interviews, conducting briefings with your stakeholders, your hiring managers, how knowledgeable you are when it comes to that. And staffing meetings are going to be a really important part of that as well. And more importantly, as recruiters, the ability to negotiate and close and make hires. So all of those are going to be essential when it comes to understanding, hey, I got a winning recruiting team here because they're solid when it comes to these components, these core function areas. Hiring managers, when we look at the hiring manager makeup as far as a full life cycle, absolutely, it's one of the most critical parts because it starts with them when it comes to requirements gathering, making sure that they're able to translate the requirements that you need as a recruiter. So they have to also be somewhat knowledgeable when it comes to the full life cycle process. And it really determines whether or not that they're good in this area by how many years of experience, how many hires have they made. You have some hiring managers that are relatively new, so they have barely made any hires, and you have hiring managers that have made hundreds, if not thousands, of hires. That's going to determine as well their knowledge base when it comes to that. But also, what is their relationships with the customer, with the client? Have they established a partnership with TA organization? And what kind of training have they been equipped with? And then finally, the fifth area when it comes to the full life cycle process and understanding is who your business partners are. A little bit different from stakeholders. Of course, business partners are going to be on a day-to-day basis. As a recruiter or as a recruiting team, you are working hand in hand when it comes to human resources. There's employee relations issues. There's compensation situations that you got to kind of work through, right? Transfers, things of that nature. And then there's going to be a support structure again when it comes to your recruiting coordinators, your administrators that provide sort of that back office support. And there's also going to be, once that hire happens, where's the handoff, the onboarding, the orientation process, kind of ties back into HR. These 5 areas are really important for you to assess, am I on a recruiting team that's winning or losing? As we wrap up this podcast episode, I think it's really important to understand that by now you should be able to assess, am I on a recruiting team that's on the winning side or the losing side of the equation? And we've all been there. We've been on both sides. And there's a lot to be said as far as the disparity when it comes to individual versus team achievements. Who's the one that really gains? Whose reputation matters the most? I think ultimately, if you have sort of these working values that you can incorporate within your team or as an individual, we're talking about world-class service, really raising that bar so you can have that. It's always about the candidate experience. How can you enhance that experience and how can you serve your customers, whether they're external or internal? The team dynamics today in corporate America or corporate culture for that matter are very challenging, right? Especially post-pandemic, in office, out of office, virtual, hybrid schedule. It's affecting relationships. Even right now, there's many companies that don't even engage or even see each other than a Teams call or a Zoom video call. And or they see each other once a year for an offsite where they try to jam pack an entire relationship in just a 2 or 3 day outing. There's a lot of sensitivity when it comes to the polarization of politics. You can't even talk about faith and religion anymore, or even for that matter, social issues that are really affecting all of us. And that is taking away from being real and authentic with our colleagues. The emotional intelligence levels when it comes to IQ, for some people, it's solid, for others, really high, but there's a lot of people that are struggling when it comes to emotional IQ. We see this dynamic going on within corporate America called quiet quitting. It's really affecting generations. And we've seen this because we've gone through the participation trophies. Everybody gets awards and recognition. But there's a lot of companies that don't even give a crap about their TA organization or their recruiting teams. They don't even give any awards, any recognition, any kudos. And it's just all about the grind. Team building is so important these days, and it can make or break an organization, especially when it comes to recruiting. And that means companies and leadership need to invest in training and professional development. That's how you're able to create high performers within an organization. Focus on elevating communication skills so that you can represent your brand and your company. I hope this episode was informative. Please remember to like. If you've watched at least a couple of my episodes here, I hope that you're subscribed. Please subscribe, comment, and share. And remember, until next time, it's all about the mindset.